Wait, you can find your purpose by scientific hand analysis? What? Welcome to the Joyous Expansion Podcast. I'm your host, Brett Dupree, scouring the globe to bring you stories of courage, passion, and resilience. If I could sum up this podcast into one word, I would use empathy. Now let's get inspired. Welcome to the Joyous Expansion Podcast. I am your host, Brett Dupree. Today we have a wonderful interview with Jayne Sanders where she talks about scientific hand analysis, which is something I never heard until I talked to Jayne Sanders. But before that, I am going to talk about my life, because how can I expect my guest to be vulnerable if I am not vulnerable myself? Wow, it feels like a minute since I talked to you people in podcast form. And to be honest, I don't really know why, because I believe it's been a week since I recorded my last one. But I guess time stands still when I am with my baby. I love her so much. We are in that goofy mode. But it's been 9 months, so this has been my longest relationship, which has been super fun. I started recording this without even knowing what I was going to talk about. But today, I guess I want to talk about stepping up and how I've been working on stepping up in my life. Basically, my mode of leadership is to assign people tasks and hope they do them. And if not, to then be disappointed and then move forward. And sometimes that kind of sucks, but at the same time, it does lead to some surprises. But one thing that happens in life is that we make mistakes in leadership. I remember last week at the Lightworker Toastmasters, we did not do a good job of setting the Toastmaster up for success. And honestly, I don't know if we done a good job this week. I'll find out tomorrow when the meeting happens. But she was complaining and kind of freaking out, even though she didn't ask what she should do. But at the same time, she did look up online, and the way that Toastmasters does it officially is different how we do it at the Lightworker Toastmasters, so she was kind of freaking out. And the current president, the person I gave up leadership to, well, not gave up, but asked to step in, was helping her along, and I kind of stepped over her, because it is still hard for me to let go. And afterwards, I recognized what happened, and I apologized. That's not something I should have done. She was doing a perfectly good job. She was doing a great job. And I stepped over it, and I apologized, because I believe apologizing is important. Vulnerability is a strength. Being able to admit that you are wrong is a strength. It is huge. I mean, imagine somebody in your life, if they do something to you that you know is wrong, and they apologize for it, and they're sincere in their apology, do you think that they are weak? In my opinion, if someone does think they are weak, then I think the other person is weak. Even though it's sad for me saying that, that is political, because we do have a president who never admits that he's wrong. And in my opinion, I don't understand how people think that is strength. The ability to admit that you're wrong is being vulnerable. And being vulnerable is a strength. It is a huge strength. So much so, I guess that's what the new Prime Minister for the UK uses, is almost an over vulnerability to make him look like a lovable goof. So I guess you can go too far with utilizing, manipulating people with vulnerability. There's no perfect way to act in this world. No matter what is positive and what is good, you can manipulate people with it. I see that all the time in spirituality, and I see that all the time in guruship and all this stuff. People take advantage of people, so I'm not saying you can't go too far with vulnerability. And that's one thing that's been very important to me in my life. Let's take my current relationship. I've been extremely vulnerable with my girlfriend, and sometimes it has been hard. But the reality is, the work I've been doing since I was 26, so 14 years, honestly, because of the way this relationship has lasted in this 9 months, it has shown that I have grown in the last 14 years. This is not a relationship I could have had almost a year ago even, going through what I did with losing my jobs. Unfortunately, when I got laid off, some girl told me she liked me, and we started a relationship. And honestly, she was a good woman. I mean, a little more quiet than I liked. I like talkers, but there was nothing about her that didn't show that we could have had a good relationship and see that it worked. But honestly, I just was not in a place to be able to be with somebody unless they did all the right things because of how I was feeling at that moment. Because I was not allowing myself to feel the pain that I was feeling and almost wanted them to recognize it for me. In fact, I noticed that about my therapist. I have a therapist, and to be honest, I haven't been open and vulnerable with my therapist. I haven't really talked about my fears, such as my fears of starting the Church of Awesome and really taking it on. This is an idea I've had for years. And I talked about this last week, and I talked about this on the Church of Awesome. It's been 2 weeks, in fact, since my last one, because just part of me is worried that I'm put time and effort and it's not going to be successful. But it has to not matter. I mean, when I think about my current podcast, the Joyous Expansion podcast, the time I became consistent in getting my podcast out, the time I became consistent on trying to make sure I finish my editing by Monday evening, which I actually did today, so pop, but definitely get it out by Wednesday. Once I let go of whether or not people actually listen to it. Yes, my current girlfriend does listen to it, and I'm so thankful for it. And that does help. I'm not going to lie. It helps. I love validation. I crave validation. One of my love languages is praise. So praising me makes me feel loved, and I love it. And so that does help. Getting validation that people like my podcast helps. Every time someone tells me they listen, they enjoy it, that helps. But holding on to that need for validation caused me to become overwhelmed, caused me to look at what I wasn't getting out of it. But once I let go of that need and decided to look at my podcast as a service to the person that I'm interviewing, that I look at editing as a service to the person who I'm interviewing so that they sound their best. Plus, for myself, I want my podcast to sound the best as a point of pride. Doesn't matter if people listen to it. I listen to it and I want it to sound its best. And once I started doing that, and luckily Podcast Guest was a godsend, podcastguest.com if you were looking to be a guest or to get guests on your podcast, go there. I have a list of 58 people. I send an email, and every once in a while, I've sent 13 generally at a time, and then I have plenty of guests, and I don't have to go out searching for guests. And those are people who really want to be on a podcast, so that at least half of them each time will schedule an interview, and bam, I have my interviews, and I don't have to continually search out for people and feel rejected or feel like they say yes, but then they don't sign up. And then I have to constantly chase them over and over and over and over again, which can be draining, but I'm getting better at that as well. Especially once I run out of the 58, I'm going to have to start searching for people and following up and sending out interest letters and things of that nature. But that's coming up later. I still have, over 20 something people to reach out to. But anyway, the important part is just that reframing and allowing myself to let go of the need to be successful, allowing me to be vulnerable. And I started being more vulnerable at the beginning of my podcast too, this part, and talking about myself and what I'm going through. And almost in fact, I am more vulnerable here than I am at my therapy sessions. I guess that's one of the negatives of not having to pay for it. Thank you, insurance. I love being insured. But at the same time, being vulnerable, in my humble opinion, is important as is the epitome of strength. Being able to A, admit when you're wrong, B, ask for help, C, surround yourself with the best people so that you can ask for help. C, don't surround yourself by yes men. Maybe this does seem like an indictment of our current president, who's doing almost everything I say that is weak in a sense, but I also think he's a very weak man because he is not vulnerable. Because when I think about my life, every time I am not vulnerable, I do not feel strong. It is not from a position of strength. Every time I try to do something on my own, it's because I'm afraid of being rejected. I'm afraid someone else is going to do it wrong and all that BS. Every time I do not be vulnerable and talk to somebody, every time I do not admit that I am wrong, I do not feel strong. And I believe from that perspective, it's not strength, it's a fear of appearing weak. And there's nothing weaker than fearing to appear weak. It's pure strength is being vulnerable. I remember when I couldn't be vulnerable. I remember when I couldn't feel emotions. I felt like such a small person. In fact, when I thought of myself back then, I'm 5'8", but in my memories, I'm like 4'2", this little tiny person, because just not putting myself out there, not asking for help, not sending my podcasts out on emails. That was probably 20-something before I actually sent them an email instead of tagging them on Facebook or something like that their podcast is out there and ready, and sending them all the photos and the links to the Minute of Motivation if they want to use them, and just let go of whether or not they actually promote it. Because life is all about growing still, and this podcast is causing me to grow. The Lightworker Toastmasters is causing me to grow. Being in my relationship with my amazing woman is causing me to grow. Stepping up with my friends from the Ascension Living Warrior group, Lindsay Wynn, who has invited me on her Game in the World, is allowing me to grow. Being a Toastmaster leadership has allowed me to grow. The amount of growth I have had from June of last year to today has been astounding. I am still growing. I am still becoming better, a better man. And I love who I am, and I'm proud of what I have done, and I am proud of what I accomplished. And a lot of that is simply asking for help and allowing myself to be disappointed and just move forward with continual asking, because when you let go of your desires, you can move forward. And as I let go of my desires, I found it's easier to live my purpose because I am not tied to the results. I learn from the outcomes. And when it comes to living your purpose, today I have a very interesting interview with Jayne Sanders, who has a different modality to discover how to live your purpose. Let me introduce you to Jayne Sanders. The science in scientific hand analysis refers to the fact that the lines in your hands mimic the neural pathways in your brain. This technology is so accurate that Forbes featured it, and Jayne is in the article. She actually works remotely using Zoom video and has clients as far away as Singapore and Papua New Guinea. Jayne sends her clients a simple handprint kit and uses their handprints. Now here's my interview with Jayne Sanders. Hello, Jayne, and welcome to my podcast.
Thanks, Brad. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. So it says here that you are a law of attraction and purpose coach. How'd you get into that?
Oh, looking for my own purpose. Oh, what a struggle that was. Decades of trying to find my own purpose. Finally found it through this crazy work that I do, and seriously, life has not been the same since.
What were you doing before that?
You know, I've had 3 careers before this one, Brett. I started out got an MBA, so I'm a corporate brat, and I was sales and marketing for a big corporation, and then got moved over to a smaller company calling on the Fortune 500 as head of sales and marketing. Got bored with that, and then became a professional speaker. And I was a professional speaker for 20 years, and I really thought I had it. But even then, after, I don't know, I'm going to guess 14, 15 years, I hit that same wall of boredom again, knowing I was supposed to do something else, but never could figure out what it was. Career coaches didn't help me. Reading all those books and filling out the assessments didn't help me. I was really stuck.
What did that boredom feel like?
What did the boredom feel like? It felt like I was off track and just in the wrong place. I always use the word stuck. I knew there was something else I was supposed to do. Felt like something was missing. I think that's a good way to articulate that too. I just knew I wasn't on it. So I needed to take action, but I didn't know what that looked like. And in my speaking business, as my heart pulled away from it, so did the revenue. And I had been quite successful at it. And it just started kind of flowing away. And I finally just realized, hey, because actually I got one of those two-befores, those proverbial two-befores or cosmic whacks in the head, where both of my parents passed away within 3 months of each other. And it just was a real wake-up call that life is short and I needed to figure it out. So I started Googling. Isn't that a riot? I started Googling, how do I find my life purpose? Because I knew that's what I was missing, the articulation of that. And that's how I ended up finding the assessment tool that I use, which is Scientific Hand Analysis.
So what about Scientific Hand Analysis that connected with you?
Well, it didn't at first, honestly. I was very skeptical. I ran across this headline and it said, discover your innate life purpose. And oh my goodness, I couldn't click fast enough on that. And once I did, the first words I saw were hand analysis, and I was very disappointed. I thought, oh, brother, that's not going to help me. And then I saw the word scientific. For the moment, that helped me put aside what I call my anal MBA skepticism. So I listened to the teleseminar, and it was pretty credible, and I really wanted my purpose. I got a scientific hand analysis done, and it blew my mind. I mean, it just answered questions that I knew I had and questions I didn't even know I had. It explained so much about my life. It's not a job description. That would be cuckoo. I knew what it told me as my purpose and my gifts and my challenges. I knew it was correct. I knew it was accurate, even things I'd never thought about before. And I knew if I took action on it that I'd find my way. And that's exactly what happened within a few months. It was amazing.
Wow, so you've been looking for your purpose for decades, and then you did a scientific hand analysis and you got it in 2 months?
Yeah, I'll say 3. I mean, I got my purpose, but it's not a job description, like I said. It's the very comprehensive and specific concept behind the job, behind work. And everybody has obviously far more than one option of how they could express their purpose. But it being the analysis, identifies your blind spots, which aren't so blind, actually. People know about them. But what they don't know is taking action on those help provide clarity, and doors just started opening. I was led to the right people and the right coach to help me figure it out. And the coach that I chose happened to be a hand analyst that I listened to on the teleseminar. And it just all came together almost like one of those V8 slaps to your forehead, where I was, oh my gosh, if I was so lit up and on fire and inspired after my hand analysis, even before I knew specifically what I wanted to do with it, that's how I want to help people feel.
So how does hand analysis explain purpose different than the other things that you did in the past?
Oh, it just goes much more, it's more specific, more detailed, and far more accurate. Because everything else you do, it comes from you, from your mind. So you're answering questions or going through a workshop or whatever, but there's always that little doubt. Is this really right? And it's usually some broad thing. I'm meant to help people. Well, of course, everybody's meant to help people, but it's the gifts you use and how you do that that make the difference. So it was just much more comprehensive and profound. It's kind of hard to describe, but I just knew it was right. All I needed to do was figure out what it literally looked like. And that's what I do as a purpose coach. I help people figure out what that looks like and what to do with it and how to work through their challenges. We call them student paths, how to work through the student paths so that they can get more clarity and take action and move forward.
So the hand analysis is just the first step.
The first step. And so you can get that independently, and a lot of people do, but many are like me and they need to go further.
So when you first started your hand analysis business, what were some of the pitfalls?
Oh, goodness. Well, I had to build up the income. I had, many pitfalls before that, trying to get on purpose, or I think these are my beliefs, that God really tries to get our attention and tries to get us on purpose and fulfill what we're meant to do and make the difference we're meant to make in the world. And when we're not doing it, he gives us little kicks in the butt, and sometimes big ones to try to push us in the right direction. And I got a few big ones. But once I started the hand analysis, I just dove right in, moved after a year to Denver, to a bigger city, just started networking everywhere and sending out newsletters, getting people into my community, just worked really, really hard. So my first year, I made just under 6 figures, which is unusual. But because it was so right for me, I loved doing it. Finally, I was on purpose and knew it and felt like it. So my biggest challenges and pitfalls were before I found this work, before I was on purpose, when I was in work that was not best for me, not in alignment with my innate purpose. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. So you're saying there's a difference between such as networking when you're feeling in alignment than feeling out of alignment with your purpose.
Yes. Because a lot of people that I work with are entrepreneurs, and most of them are not in alignment. Well, the ones that come to me are not in alignment with purpose. Others are, they love their work, but they're not making the money that they want to make. And that tells me that they're tangled in some of those challenges, those student paths. So either way, that's how I help. And then the law of attraction. Oh, I love the law of attraction. It's so powerful. So that comes into play too.
When you first started your hand analysis business, what were some of the pitfalls?
Oh, gosh. How long is our interview? Consider this, Brett. Every marking in the hands has both what's called a master path and a student path. Every marking. And there are dozens and dozens of markings in the hands. And some people have more markings than others. And considering that everyone has both a master and a student path, and that nobody can be on the master path 100% of the time, bummer, but we're human, right? Works in progress. I had dozens. Now, some impact you more than others. I would say some of the bigger ones for me were getting overwhelmed, easily not really standing in my power and owning that, not being aware of many of the gifts I have and using them. In other words, I have a lot of gifts that support my ability to coach and counsel people. Another big one was not being consistently connected with my intuition and recognizing it, honoring it, and trusting it. What's another one? Oh, sometimes not speaking up, worried about losing a friend or a loved one if I spoke up, if I was upset or hurt or angry. And that doesn't work for me based on what's in my hands. So I'm still working on that. I'm getting better at it. But again, because nobody's on the master path 100%, I'll never conquer that totally.
So how do you help people, or how did you get through the overwhelm?
Well, I still run into it sometimes. And it's just, I have to stop and sit down. Like I have a book coming out in about 6 weeks, and I was getting really overwhelmed with the marketing. There's so many options. I can't do them all. How do I have time? Because it's just me. How do I have time to do all these options that I want to do? Which ones are best? Which are going to give me the most ROI? I was really getting overwhelmed with it. And so literally yesterday, I just sat down and took this pile of options that I have, this book and all these things I've printed out, and started making a list of all the different things that I want to do. And that helped me get out of the overwhelm. I'm still not done with that list. And then once I finish it, I will prioritize it and then just tackle it. But when you keep a lot of stuff in your head and try to figure things out like that, doesn't work. Things are just swirling around and swirling around. So you got to do a brain dump and get it out on paper.
Congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
That reminds me of I think they call it the choice paradox. The thing about human beings, the more choices we have, the less happy we are, because there's always that feeling in the back of our head that we've made the wrong one.
Yeah, I haven't heard that, but that makes sense. Here's my immediate response to that is, I got to tell you, Brett, when you're on purpose and you know it, you don't question. If you make decisions based in alignment with that and with your top values, then it's just not that big of an issue. In other words, I don't experience that once I make choices. It's done. I know they've come from a good place. Are they always right? No, but I just don't look back.
Nice. That sounds like a great way to live.
I think it's critical. I don't think there's anything more important than living in alignment with purpose.
So what is like dealing with the people in your life when you did a big 180 going from an MBA into a public speaker into being a purpose and law of attraction, a hand analyst coach?
I would say the only people that I really noticed a difference with, and this was subtle, was my family. I was raised in a small town in Southern Illinois, so a conservative area, raised Catholic. I did live in California for a very long time. While I was a professional speaker, I was in LA, and I moved back then to my small town to be with my parents, to spend time with them as they were aging, because I could see that as I was traveling home. I was able to visit a lot because of traveling all the time as a speaker. And I could see my dad declining, so I moved back there so that I could spend time with them. And it was while I was there that I finally ran across this teleseminar and found scientific hand analysis. So I'm sure that they thought it was very weird, not so much to my face, and then I moved away right away. I was only there 5 years. And the last year is when the last year and a half, I guess, is when I found this work. It did cause a little bit of a distance, but it's hard to judge too because I moved away again. In Denver, they're all over the place. I have 6 siblings. They're all over the place. So I can't put a number or a definitive amount, the distance that could have been caused by this, but I have to tell you, whatever it was worth it. Our family's very close. But again, being on purpose is just so fulfilling. Meaning and fulfillment is really what people crave.
So, what is your average day like now that you feel on purpose in comparison to when you weren't?
Well, I certainly don't dread going to work. I've worked out of my home anyway, even as a speaker, so decades. I can't imagine having to commute to an office, but every hand analysis I do is so fulfilling because everybody relates to it. They get it. Some people cry because they've never felt so seen or understood. And that fulfillment is just, every phone call, can you imagine, with clients? Makes you feel good and rewarding and like I'm making the difference that I need to make. That doesn't always happen with all coaching calls because I don't know how many of your listeners are coaches, but a lot of it depends on the action that the client takes. That can be a little frustrating. For the most part, even that, I'm so much more fulfilled than I was before, and I look forward to it, and I know I'm doing what I'm meant to do. And there's just an intrinsic value to that. It's hard to put words to.
Looking over your website, one thing that stood out to me is the fact that you have a horse,
I do.
and your horse has changed your life. And I've met a few people who actually do horse coaching and stuff. So, how has the horse affected and changed your life?
I have a horse. I've had several over the past, I guess 20 years. A dream as a kid, but never got the opportunity to really be around horses much until my late 30s. And the reason that people use them for therapy, as you mentioned, is because they're so intuitive. They're healers, they're teachers. They reflect back to us what we need the most support with, what's hidden to us. They're used for teamwork, for leadership, for communication, but then also more healing aspects. Autistic kids, PTSD, returning veterans, grief support. I know 2 entire nonprofits here in the Front Range, Colorado area that use horses specifically for women recovering from breast cancer. So they're just amazing animals. And I love all animals. I've had lots of dogs. I have 2 cats now that I rescued. The horse I have now I rescued. I just lost one of my horses, still hard to talk about, a year and a half ago. Maybe because of their size and because they are such healers. They get under your skin like no other animal that I've experienced. I think part of it is because they are so big, but they're so dependent on us. I don't know. They're just amazing. So yes, horses, thank you for asking, Brett. They are a huge part of my life. So I'm all about horses and hands, I guess you could say.
So, you've been doing hand analysis and coaching for a while now. What have been some of your success stories with working with others?
Oh my goodness. So let me say, yes, I've been doing hand analysis for over 7 years. I've always coached as part of my corporate life and did a lot of coaching and facilitation as a speaker as well. But now it's specifically purpose and law of attraction coaching. So here's an extreme, true, but extreme. One client went from broke to 6 figures in 6 months. Definitely can impact income when you're working on your student paths and working through them. People have started businesses that they love. They've changed careers. I've had a couple people who were miserable where they were in their work, but when we worked on other things, their personal lives started bringing in really law of attraction. Then, whoa, all of a sudden they start enjoying their work again and big time, don't want to leave. Just all kinds of results. People just love their lives and love their work more as a result of the coaching. The hand analysis gives them confidence, validation that they're either on the right track or confirmation that they're on the wrong track and where to go, what their student paths are and how to take action. And when we take action on those student paths, it's subtle, but when we grow and change on the inside, things just start showing up differently on the outside. Doors open, you meet people that lead you on a different direction. You pay attention to a billboard that gives you a message. Who knows? but people just feel validated and confirmed, gives them confidence to really step into who they are and their gifts. So there are both intrinsic and tangible outcomes.
Sounds very fulfilling to work with people and getting those awesome results.
Oh, it's just, there's nothing like it. I mean, finally, and it's not like I hated my other careers, particularly the speaking and facilitating and workshops. I really enjoyed that for a long time. And interestingly, according to my hands, it's because I was closer to being on purpose. And that's why that career lasted longer than the other two, because it was more fulfilling, but yet not using enough of my gifts, which is why it didn't last. It's all right there. It's amazing. It's all in your hands. But there's no predictions to it, by the way. This is not palm reading. It's all about who you are and why you're here. Now, past things can show up in the hands, not the specifics, but how they impacted your life. A lot of the special gifts that I've mentioned come from past experiences, because by going through those, you now have experience and wisdom to help other people through their challenges.
So we're coming to the end of our interview, and one thing I like to ask people is to give a 1 minute of motivation. You can imagine this as if you were in a time machine and you went back to your 8-year-old self, and you need to give your 8-year-old self what she needed to know to live her life's purpose, but at the same time, you only have a minute before you have to go back into 2019, or think about it as condensing your life purpose in a minute. So are you ready?
I'm ready. I feel that I would like to suggest to people, never underestimate how important it is to discover and live your purpose. My saying is, live your purpose, love your life. People crave meaning and fulfillment. They think they want money, and certainly we need security. People want happiness, but what lasts, what surpasses those things is getting meaning and fulfillment out of life and what we're doing and the contribution that we're making, the legacy that we're leaving. And people want money and happiness because of the feeling that those things, but those are fleeting. Purpose and fulfillment, that's where it's at. I don't think there's anything more important than living in alignment with purpose and making the difference that we're meant to make in the world.
Thank you, Jayne, for coming on to my podcast. I really enjoyed listening to your story of how you're living your life not aligned with your purpose, and how discovering hand analysis has allowed you to live and discover your purpose so that you're more aligned with what you want. And your ability to help other people do the same is commendable. So thank you for coming on this podcast, and thank you even more for the service that you bring to make this world a brighter place.
Oh, Brett, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and your listeners. And as you can tell, I love talking about this work because I know the difference that it makes. And I appreciate your comments and just grateful to be here.
May your day be special.
Thank you. Yours as well.
And there you have it, folks. That is my interview with Jayne Sanders. This is the first I've heard of scientific hand analysis. One of the fun parts about doing this podcast is learning so many awesome things. Though this is one of those times I do regret in not trying to arrange something where I get to try it out first, so I can, at this point, talk about my experience with it, because I think that would be even better than me just talking about what I think of the interview. But I thought it was interesting. It has enough to pique my interest in looking into it. I'm always interested in new modalities and new ways to read myself and determine what I need to do in my life for purpose, because in my humble opinion, there is almost nothing more important than being on purpose. I know for myself, when I feel out of purpose, out of alignment, there is some sort of feeling of dissatisfaction. When you're working a job that's not in alignment with their purpose or your why, as Simon Sinek puts it, it's hard work to be able to go at it. And some people are able to be the self-directed person who can do awesome no matter what they do. But for a lot of us, having that sense of purpose, that sense of drive is what keeps us going. And eventually, even if you are that person, it'll catch up with you. And you'll find yourself doing drugs and alcohol, or binge watching Battlestar Galactica for the 5th time in a row, thinking to yourself, wouldn't it be nice if the Cylons came and ended the world so you didn't have to go to work tomorrow? A lot of times our escapes are not just the cocaine and the binge drinking. Sometimes it's the eating or numbing yourself playing video games all day. Not saying anything wrong with playing video games, but if you're using that to escape the sadness of your life, anything can be used as an escape. And one way to escape the escape, if you will, is to discover your purpose. So if you are interested in working with Jayne Sanders, you can reach her at jane@purewisdom.com or through her website, www.purewisdom.com. If you tell her you find yourself from Joyous Expansion, you'll get a $100 special discount. How nice is that? I look forward to hearing about your successes with working with Jayne. And that is episode 36 of the Joyous Expansion podcast. Wow, that number just keeps getting higher and higher. How cool is that? So this is once again Brett Dupree, your Joyous Expansion life coach, champion of authentic joy and catalyst of transformation of the Church of Awesome. If you like this podcast, please tell me. I would love to hear from you at BRE2Ts, DUPR2Es at joyousexpansion.com. You can also find more information about me at joyousexpansion.com. And that's where I have a free ebook just for you called Breaking Out of the Prisons of Your Fears. Also, if you want to listen to more episodes of this podcast, you can find them at pod.joyousexpansion.com. Actually, podcast.joyousexpansion.com does exist. That's my old podcast. So if you want to hear how I was 3 years ago, right before actually, last one was about my book release party. So if you want to learn the lead up to that, you can listen to that too. If you're listening to wherever podcasts are available, if you can leave a review, leave a like, click on some stars, whatever. I would appreciate that so much, but I already appreciate you for making it this far and listening to me. I love making this podcast. I love doing these interviews. I just love every aspect of it. Heck, I even love the editing now. Being able to listen to my sexy, sexy voice at least once a week as I edit is also a treat. But also re-listening to the interviewees and trying my best to make them sound their best is just so much fun. And I really appreciate every aspect of doing this podcast. And you listening to it makes me appreciate you even more. And so once again, this is Brett Dupree reminding you to be love, to be joy, to be awesome. Now play that jingle.
JoyousExpansion.com. JoyousExpansion.com. Come and say hello to Brett Dupree. He is an inspirational life coach. Good for you and good for me. He turned my life from grey to blue. I'm sure he'll do the same for you. Get in touch and you'll see your life will change dramatically. JoyousExpansion.com. JoyousExpansion.com. Yeah.